So, good evening everyone, and thank you for that dramatic entry. I must say that I did not expect my return to Heritage Girls School to be so dramatic. The flight that I was to come in this afternoon got cancelled. So, as you can imagine, I had to come by road. And like from the schedule that Rajhans had shared with me, the event was to get over at 8:10. And if I had to clock in my TED talk, I would have to be here by 7:50. And it is 7:50 on the clock, and here I am. I think this brings us to a very important point that I wish to make here through my TED talk. Of course, my TED talk today is about why the Indian CEO. But more than that, it is the resilience of the people in India. It is our ability to deliver despite all odds, against all odds, which is a cornerstone why the world trusts an Indian every single time. आंधी रोके तो हम तूफान रोके तो हम आग का दरिया. So I think this goes on to prove why Indians are being acknowledged so much on the global stage. There is a Sundar Pichai at Google, a Satya Nadella at Microsoft, a Shiv Nadar at HCL, a V. Narasimhan at Novartis, a Lakshman Narasimhan at Starbucks, and Arvind Krishna at IBM, Ashantanu Narayan at Adobe, including the CEO of a website called OnlyFans, was an Indian woman called Amrapali Khan. The head of World Bank is also an Indian called Ajay Banga. The former head of World Bank was also Anshula Kans, the former managing director and chairperson of State Bank of India. Every single major global institution today, a staggering 25% of Fortune 500 companies today are headed by people of Indian origin. And that brings us to one of the most important topics. Why? Why is it that the world trusts an Indian brain to deliver every single time? So when Larry Page and Sergey Brin, without naming the institution again, when they reformed a company known as Alphabet, and they chose Sundar Pichai as the successor, in their founder's note they wrote something. It's on a website called abc.xyz. You know what did they write? The reason why we think Sundar is the ideal successor for all of our businesses is because he has an encyclopedic knowledge of every Google product or service ever created. And I think that goes on to prove why the world trusts an Indian brain so much. Harvard, the #1 university apparently in the world, also has had Indian deans for a very long time. From Nitin Nohria, who was the dean of Harvard Business School, to the current dean, Shrikant Datar, to Rakesh Khurana, the dean of Harvard College. The principal institution at Harvard, established in 1632, is also headed by an Indian. This goes on to prove in industry academia, there is always an Indian. So there are a lot of reasons, and I think it is about time we spoke on this on a platform like TED. Why is it that the world is banking so much on Indians at a time when the Western media is always all guns about small achievements back in the US or back in the Western part of the world, the so-called developed part of the world? I think it is our moral responsibility to highlight such an important trend happening in industry and academia globally. The emergence of Indians in leadership positions. And this is not just a trend that started last 10 or 20 years. This has been in the making for the last 40 or 50 years. A large credit goes to our institutions. The same institutions that you guys are afraid of, the same UGC NCERT curriculum that we often criticize in the name of all the rote learning and all the examinations that we have to go through. It is those very institutions that have created these geniuses. They say an IIT IIM degree is Indian education system's direct ticket to the corporate boardroom. And that is exactly what it has delivered. All of these people, we look at Sundar Pichai. He is a metallurgical engineer from IIT Kharagpur, goes on to lead the world's largest tech conglomerate today. What does this teach us? Interdisciplinarity, my friends. Indians thrive in interdisciplinary roles. It is because of the way we are brought up. because of this very NCERT curriculum. All of you, despite your lack of interest in another subject, until class 10th, you do get to read a whole lot of subjects. You do read history at length. You do read human biology at length. Even if you weren't to become a doctor, you would have amassed enough terminologies to take it forward in life. You have amassed enough mathematical knowledge that even if you choose PCB or humanities, you still know basic mathematics, you still know quadratic equations, you still know linear equations. So you have amassed a whole lot of knowledge. This is what the world is looking for today. I've gone through thousands of CVs. All of these great companies, they have something called as a JD, a job description. In that, today they have a word called cross-functional experience. This is a direct phrase that is used in the JDs of every great company out there. They all mention this again and again. And there is always an Indian who fits that equation, cross-functional experience. We thrive at the crossroads of different disciplines because we have gone through that process. The resilience of the Indian bringing up. We all want to be rich, we all want to travel to important countries, we all want to take that business class flight that technical Guruji posts about on Instagram. We all want to do that. But it is the middle class upbringing, the value system of India that the world recognizes today. The value system. An Indian, a lot of sheikhs back in the 80s appointed a lot of Indians at important positions. You know why? They were so sure this guy won't cheat us because they had no clue about mathematics, they had no clue about English. All they knew was we had a lot of petrol and petrodollars started happening. But there was always a guy from Andhra Pradesh, a guy from Maharashtra there in an important accountancy position because the world recognizes that we are trustworthy in managing huge finances, in managing complexities. So, a couple years back, there is a university, because Ted doesn't want me to name them, I won't, but it is considered one of the greatest universities, one of the oldest in the Western bloc of the world, wherein a lot of important people have studied for the last 600, 700 years. At one such university, in one such fine, sunny June afternoon, there was a lot of important talk going on. It was a lecture about how human beings evolved, about how life happened, about how a lot of important things around us happened. There were 4,000 people in that hall, and as luck would have it, in such countries our best friends are Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, despite our differences in this side of the world. So I was seated with a bunch of Pakistanis, Bangladeshis and Nepalis in one corner of the hall, that the speaker on the stage, a very revered professor, did not even bother looking at. And as he spoke, he kind of gave us a few looks here and there, and then he came upon a topic about the evolution of human beings, about the building blocks of life, he said. And he said, you know, there's a thing called amino acids at the very heart of the building blocks of life. And then he looked at everyone and said, you guys know what I'm saying, right? And there was pin drop silence. All our counterparts from the so-called developed part of the world had no answer to it. At that moment, in pin drop silence, in an audience of 4,000, a hand goes up from that neglected corner in that auditorium, which was mine. And I said, the amino acids you are asking are lysine, arginine, histidine, aspartic acid, glutamic acid, serine, threonine, aspartate, glutamine, tyrosine, cysteine, glycine, alanine, valine, leucine, isoleucine, methionine, proline, phenylalanine, and tryptophan. My friends, this is the power of the Indian education system. That has been shelved away for over 2,000 years because of foreign dominance and subjugation and all of those things. This is the era of recognizing India's supremacy in tech. There is a reason why iPhone 16 Pro, Pro Max, and the 16 and 16 Plus all carry a tagline called Made in India. Because Apple, as you saw, has come to India and has started investing in India. And Hyderabad and all of these places have become the assembly lines, the factories for iPhones. There's a reason why Microsoft has its largest R&D base in India. There's a reason why the biggest search engine has such a lot of importance in India. When you step into Silicon Valley at HQ of one of these companies, you feel like you are walking in IIT Bombay or IIT Kharagpur. That is the number of Indians you see. So the world's tech industry today thrives on the Indian brain. And this very phenomena is taking shape at the intersection of foreign policy. We call this as tech diplomacy. India's ability to deliver to the world in terms of technology every single time. You all saw that famous video of Elon Musk's Falcon rocket returning back to Earth with what they call as chopsticks, the metal arms, catching it back into bay. They called it a anti-gravity feat. That was just 2 weeks ago that happened. Behind that also the principal engineer and the entire team of 70 engineers, of which 61 of them were Indians. This is the staggering level of Indian complexity at the world stage. India's ability to solve complex issues for the world. And I think we are at a time and an era in the world order where we are delivering not just for ourselves, but for the future, for all of you. And you guys, when you pass out of this great institution, when you step into your college life, and when you're going to start eventually working, you will be close to the year 2030. From 2030 to 2047, they call it the final leap of India's independence journey, Azadi Ka Amrit Kal, which has gained a kind of a momentum for itself. I think this is the era that you guys must bank on. You must thrive on interdisciplinarity. You must work on cross-sectional, cross-functional ability to deliver to the world. Because there is immense opportunity for Indians. Indians are being considered world leaders today. And there is a reason why our Honorable Prime Minister is also acknowledged so much. Not just the Italian Prime Minister, but a whole lot of other people recognize him on the world stage. I think it is time we recognize this ability for India to deliver. And no one's going to come and tell us that this is what we expect out of you, or this is where we see you. It is time we do that for ourselves. Because for ages and ages, there has been a thing called the National Spell Bee, where for the last 2,000 years, my friends, there has been an Indian kid who has been winning it. But the Western media won't highlight that. You look at Gukesh and all of these incredible kids, teenagers, delivering at such incredible levels. Just yesterday I saw a video of a 14-year-old, 15-year-old young girl grandmaster who came and touched Magnus Carlsen's foot. And that, I think, is the level of India's value system that goes on to build an entire narrative for itself. There is a reason why the world chooses an Indian at the top spot. Our technical expertise, our conceptual clarity, our core competency, our resilience. Sundar Pichai famously said that my one-way ticket to San Francisco was my father's annual income back in the day when he first flew to Stanford University. Our resilience. We know how to handle funds, whether it's billions of dollars, whether it's a $2 trillion company. You know why? Because we know how we have managed to use that 200 rupee note for almost 2 weeks when we were in college. Or we know how we have last minute taken a girl out for a date and still managed, with just 500 rupees in your pocket, still managed to pay the bill at 492. So we all know that. We know how to handle funds. And India's resilience, whether it is at fund management, whether it is at crisis management, especially in times of global financial and economic meltdown, there are 9 out of 10 CEOs who are handling the current economic meltdown in the US and around the entire parts of the Western world that are struck by recession right now. They are all Indians. So this resilience, this ability to understand what is important, understand essential things, understand human values. Our value system goes on to also develop us into a more fulfilling and a more diverse individual who works at the cross-section of humanities, science, math, and logic. And I think this is where the world today wants Indians to be. And this is where the world wants a leader to be. And I think you guys, this is the ideal opportunity. This is the wake-up call. This is the call to action for all of you to understand that the world you are stepping in after this few years of education is going to change the way the world will perceive Indians. And I think it is your time to write a new narrative for Brand India, as we call it, India Incorporated. This is your time to write the new era of India Incorporated, wherein Indians, through our scientific, technical, medical, and managerial skills, will give back to the world. We are the land of Sushruta, we are the land of Aryabhatta, we are the land of Charaka, we are the land of pioneers. The heliocentric model of the universe, which they said was given by Galileo Galilei and the church, who are orthodox, who did not believe that the earth was not the center of the universe and in fact it was the sun. They asked Galileo to say that, take your words back. So there's a famous quote of Galileo in Latin that translates to, nevertheless it moves. As in the earth, nevertheless it still does a revolution and it still rotates on its own axis. Someone who loved Galileo, after he was buried, exhumed his dead body in the middle of the night, took out a middle finger, and that middle finger today, the skeleton of which is kept in a glass jar in a museum in Italy that points towards the Vatican in the direction. My friends, these are all incredible tales that you have heard. But many, many years before, almost 1,000 years before, it was Vaghabhat who gave the heliocentric model of the universe. It was 997 years, to be precise, before the Renaissance, before Galileo's discovery of the heliocentric model of the universe. I think all of these incredible examples are enough to prove that we have been a land of innovation. We have been a land that constantly thrives on curiosity, that delivers every single time. So despite all of the subjugation, despite the marketing of the West, it is now your time to rewrite Brand India. And with this, I wish you guys all the very best. I think what we have accomplished here today is a feat in itself. Like P.C. Sarkar, the great magician, when he was performing in Hokkaido, Japan, P.C. Sarkar Sr. was performing a show and he collapsed. He had a heart attack on stage. But P.C. Sarkar Jr., his son, showed it as if it was a magic trick, because they were both, the makeups were alike, they were both dressed alike. The people in Japan thought this was a magic trick. When P.C. Sarkar Sr. fell on stage, his son, who was debuting for the first time as a magician, walked straight into the hall from behind. People were surprised that a man just fell and they just took him inside, and here comes the man again. They started clapping. And while they were clapping, P.C. Sarkar Jr. was performing his first magic trick when his father was being taken in an ambulance and he breathed his last. The show must go on. What we have accomplished till date is great, but we should not thrive on that greatness. We must keep excelling. If you have done something great, do not thrive on it for too long. Just forget it and do what's next. Something that Steve Jobs said, it's famously painted on a wall at the Apple headquarters. If you do something great, don't thrive on it for too long. Move it aside and do something else that is great. My coming here today was destined. I was destined to speak to all of you. The show must go on. And that is my message for all of you. All the very best and thank you so much.